The descendants of an enslaved artist have made a historic agreement with Boston's Museum of Fine Arts. The family of David Drake now owns work he left behind. They spoke with our Danae Bucci about the experience and its meaning.
I'm sure he couldn't have conceived it, and we definitely couldn't have conceived it. So
these 4 letters are the only reason Pauline and Yaba Baker were able to trace back their ancestry to enslaved potter David Drake.
For him to sign those jars in a way that couldn't be erased and knowing he could be killed for it is, to me, his stance against oppression.
He was one of the few literate slaves, writing poetry and signing his pots. 175 years later, 2 of them are on display at the Museum of Fine Arts. And in a historic first-of-its-kind agreement, the MFA is restoring ownership of the works back to the Drake descendants.
What's different here is that it's the first case where we've looked at a work made by an enslaved maker and really made the point that it's the same issue of stolen properties.
The sign jar is on a long-term loan from the family, and the poem jar has been purchased by the museum. It reads, "I made this jar for cash, though it's called lucre trash," likely commentary on Drake's enslavers gaining at his expense. Both works are on display in the museum's Art of the Americas wing.
I was asked, what do you think Dave would say? And I think he would say, God granted him the grace that he asked for in one of his poems, and he's also granted that grace to his family.
Which is made up of engineers, attorneys, business executives, and educators, all viewing this incredible discovery and restored ownership as a delayed blessing for their ancestor.
To think that he went through all these years hoping and praying, because he did ask for God's grace, and now it's come full circle, and we are like recipients of what his hard work went into.
Yeah, there are other David Drake pieces on display at museums around the world. His family hopes those museums will take similar action. As we just saw, mastery of craft is a way to keep history alive. One author and chairmaker is ensuring that Black American craftspeople receive the recognition they deserve. A short history of Black craft in 10 objects is a love letter to the work of Black artists across furniture, pottery, fashion, quilting, and more. Author Robel Owaka was inspired as he researched the people he highlights in his book.
It just shows how dynamic and syncretic Black culture has always been, and that it's so diverse.
Boston-born and the son of Ethiopian immigrants, Owaka grew up in the South and now resides in Atlanta, Georgia. He's not only a scholar of craft, but an artist himself. His specialty? Stylized chairs. Some so detailed you might be wondering if you can sit on them.
Every chair I've made up until this point, you can definitely sit in. It is important to me that the chairs actually function and that I make them as if somebody's gonna sit on them forever. I made a chair inspired by face jugs, and they were typically smaller vessels that enslaved potters made, and most likely they were used as sort of a talismanic spiritual object. And this is kind of given like further credence by where these face jugs were found, Underground Railroad famously.
Owaka found his passion for chair making just 10 years ago while working in residential construction. He decided to attend a 2-week furniture making workshop at the North Bennett Street School in Boston's North End. This year, he returned to the school for a discussion about making the history of Black craft more visible for future generations.
When I got into furniture making, I wanted to know what were Black people making, and that information was just not accessible.
Owaka's book is filled with stories of artists who have shaped his own craft, like Harriet Powers, a quilt maker who lived on a plantation in Georgia.
I think it's America's greatest artistic tradition, hands down, are the quilts that Black women in the South made. It was only right that I made the book about the things that I actually draw inspiration from.
Powers completed Pictorial Quilt in 1889. It tells both historical and biblical stories in its panels.
This quilt was still teaching people. And then that really kind of sparked me wow, craft is really this archive for Black life.
Owaka also highlights another enslaved artisan, chairmaker Richard Pointer.
He essentially took what was once seen as a commoner's chair, a ladder back, and what he did was he really refined that style and made it more elegant and comfortable at the same time. He would have been lost to history if it wasn't for an ad that he took out in the local paper while he was still enslaved in Tennessee, saying that I am the maker of the original pointer chair.
Two Black artisans, each looking to see themselves reflected in the American Institution of Craft, meet each other for the first time. That's Allison Crony Moses, a fellow Black artisan based in Allston. A graduate of Rhode Island School of Design, Crony Moses is carving her name into the history of Black craft. For Crony Moses, craft was woven into her daily life long before she stepped into the studio.
I have also been influenced from craft showing up in home life and community and Guyanese culture, because my parents are from Guyana.
She first began the practice of her signature style of curving wood while studying at RISD.
The piece that I made in that class ended up being acquired by the MFA in Boston. And so I had started to find this aesthetic. I really fell in love with these curved forms, the process of bent lamination and coopering.
But in her formal education, she quickly noticed a gap between her experience and identity, which were not reflected in the institutions of leadership around her.
I think what happened, because of not seeing myself reflected in the department, I ended up doing community engaged work as part of my degree program.
Crony Moses uses the experience of being in community with others to make her art. She's seen a change in the acknowledgement of her work and that of other Black craftspeople.
Craft is vibrant in both places by Black folks. Black craftspeople have built our country, but has not been recognized in the craft institutions.
In 2019, while balancing life with her children and a full-time job, Crony Moses was invited by a curator at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston to create a piece exploring motherhood, a theme that is now still a main marker in her work.
I was thinking about a project around motherhood, and pandemic hit, a racial awakening of white society was happening, and I needed to be making with my hands.
Crony Moses used the chaos of the pandemic to strengthen her community and fuel her creativity, reinforcing connection in a time of isolation.
I was trying to identify Black mothers in my neighborhood that I wanted to build a stronger community so that my kids saw the value of their skin tone and my skin tone and our cultural experiences. And I was like, how do I represent this in work?
Motherhood, Black femininity, and community remain at the heart of Crony Moses' work, highlighting the everyday moments of resilience and joy. She also shared that spirit as a participant in the Boston Public Art Triennial's Accelerator program. Selected artists worked to create public art that sparked community conversations.
So it's really, I think, an exciting time for Boston, where it's taking over the city and focusing on art in a different way, hopefully bringing people into the city to look at art.
Her idea came to life with this public installation in Charlestown called This Moment for Joy. Her piece, made of wood, copper, and paint, was on display for months as part of the Triennial's citywide exhibition, which transformed public spaces into open-air galleries. Talk about incredible work. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can watch the show on our very local app. It's free to download on your phone, tablet, or smartphone. Have a wonderful afternoon.